Hi everybody, Cheaply Chic, Lynette here. Welcome back to my channel. I thought it would be fun today to pop on and share with you a very simple, quick way to make a wallpaper envelope journal. I'm sure that many of you who are already part of my channel know how to make a journal like this, but I do know there's a lot of people out there that are new to the junk journal world and might appreciate seeing how I created these fun little projects. So the awesome thing about these journals is they don't take too much time, they don't take a lot of fancy supplies, and they're even kid friendly if you have kids home from school and you want a little project, something to keep them busy, not just for the afternoon as they're creating the journal, but over the course of their summer. So I created this shell wallpaper journal and I made one for myself, and I'm planning on using one of these for the summer. I'm also going to be part of a collab in the month of July with Paper Terrace. She's put a group of amazing artists together that are going to be sharing simple ideas for decorating pages in a journal, and I plan on using one of these journals for that collab. So I'm really excited to get to take part in a collab of hers, and I'm really excited to play around with one of these journals. So if you're watching this video today and this is something you already know how to do, maybe it will just spark some interest. If you want a fun little project for the afternoon, grab your supplies, work along with me. If you're new to the junk journal world, this is something that you can complete in a short amount of time and have a fun little project in the end. So without further ado, let's jump into the project. So you really only need a few simple supplies for this project. The most important one, I would say, if you're going to create a journal like I'm creating, is one of these mailer envelopes. They come in different sizes. Grab my ruler here. They all come in different sizes. Any size will work. You can make this journal any size you would like to. Mine happens to measure just shy of 9.5 inches tall and probably about 12 and 3/4 inches wide. I decided to use a white envelope. You can use a yellow envelope. There's no wrong way to do this. The other thing I'm going to be using is this shell wallpaper. I live in Florida, and what I love about this wallpaper, I think I actually got it up north. I think my mom found it for me. But what I love about it is the fact that there are shells on here that are on our coastline here in the Gulf. These are called olives. They happen to be my favorite shell, and I have them all over my house. This is a scallop. I love the fact that I think this is a queen conch, if I were to guess right, even though the art's not exactly right on it. Anyway, I love this wallpaper, and it's perfect for summer. Now, if you are brand new to junk journaling and you don't have wallpaper, you can absolutely just use scrapbook paper or whatever other paper you have in your stash for this project. You don't have to have wallpaper, although what I really appreciate about the wallpaper is the thickness of it and the fact that it's going to make this a little sturdier. I would suggest if you're going to do anything super thin, like thin paper over the top of it, you might want to add paper to the inside of the journal as well, but we'll get to that a little bit farther down the line here. Okay, so since I am working with this wallpaper, the first thing we want to do is glue our envelope to the wallpaper. I want to look at the direction of this piece of wallpaper, and I think I'm going to choose to glue my envelope this way. The other thing you're going to want to do is to put this flap. We're going to keep this flap today, and we're going to turn this side of the journal into an open pocket. You're going to want this to point to the right. You want this flap to be in your right hand, and let me tell you why. Originally, the first one I made, I thought I wanted it to be in my left hand, and I don't know if that's because I'm left-handed or what I was thinking, and really it doesn't matter. It's your journal. You can make it however you want to, but I thought I wanted it over here so that my cord would wrap around the opposite direction. The only problem with that is when I open my journal, it would open backwards. So I decided to start over and make it the proper direction so that when I open my flap, it opens this direction. I just wanted to point that out to you. If you want your journal to open the right direction like a book does, you want the flap to be over here on the right side. So now you're just going to take your glue, and if you're brand new and you just have regular Elmer's glue, that'll work fantastic. But I do like a wet glue on this because it does tend to hold a little better. So flipping the envelope over, the side that you would put an address on is what we're going to glue down to the wallpaper. Like I said, for those of you who have been part of my channel, I'm keeping this super simple and basic. I want everybody to be able to understand what I'm doing and not be intimidated by the process of putting this together. And then, so I don't waste too much wallpaper, I'm going to keep this toward the side of my wallpaper. Try to keep it a little even with the edge there. And then just glue it down. All right, so now you just want to take your scissors, and I'm just going to cut this off of my wallpaper roll. Now that that's glued down to the wallpaper, you can kind of see how the front of the cover is going to look and that this flap's going to come over. So let's just cut this out so we can move on to the next step. So then I like to just fold my envelope and to make that crease where the spine's going to be. So I'm folding this end right up to the edge of the flap. It's easier to close the flap first, like you were closing the envelope. Go ahead and do that. And then you can see where you want the cover of your book to be. So I'm making it flush with the opening of this envelope. I am loving that. Super cute. So now we're going to cover the inside of the journal. Now what I'm doing, because of the fact that the scrapbook paper is only 12 inches and mine is actually wider than that, I'm going to also add 2 flaps to the side. So I'm going to show you how to do that today. If you are using a smaller envelope, you don't necessarily have to do this step. I like it because it hides the end of my envelope. So I'm playing around with this paper pad. This is an old paper pad that I picked up at Michael's years ago. So I'm going to pick my big piece that I want to line the back of the journal. I like this one. And because I'm already into all these paper scraps, I'm going to pick what I want to make these little tucks on the side. I know that I need 1.5 inches for these little tucks. I do like this pattern here. I like the fact that my colors contrast, but they blend well together. And that's what I'm going to use on the inside of my flap. All right, so those are my 3 pieces of paper. So you can see here that when I put this paper flush, there is a little bit of a gap there on the end. That's okay. That's why I'm making my tucks. So my envelope measures just under 9.5. It's actually 9 7/16. I think that's right. So that's what I'm going to make the length of my paper. So you want to make sure that you have your pattern facing down the direction that you want your journal to go. And I am just under 9.5. I am going to cut this paper 9.5. Just under 9.5 also. And then I know that I want to make my little tuck spots for the sides at 1 3/4 inches. So I'm going to cut 2 of those. And you could make your flaps any size that you want to. I just like mine at 1 3/4 inches for this size of envelope. So now we're able to glue this page down to the envelope. Because of the fact that my envelope has this opening here that's kind of a triangular shape, I'm going to pull my paper down so I don't accidentally glue my envelope shut while I'm doing this. It's been known to happen. And we're just going to glue that down. Trying to pay attention to having this straight before I push it too hard. And then just to make sure my fold is in place, I like to crease that paper right away while the glue is still a little wet, so I know that my paper can, move around how it needs to. So that is what we have so far. Now here's where it could get a little complicated. I want to add sewing to my journal. If you don't have a sewing machine, you absolutely don't have to do this step. If you have something like washi tape, instead of stitching, you could add that to the side of your flap here. I picked this ribbon up at Dollar Tree. You could take your glue and you could add that to the side of these flaps instead. There are so many options, you don't have to sew, but I do want to sew, so why that's going to make it a little tricky is that this piece that's over here by the flap, I do want to sew both sides of this flap, but I can't do that when I already have glued it down to the journal because I would glue my envelopes shut. So I have to do that first. So on the back cover, the right hand side of the cover, I'm going to sew vertically on each side of that strip. But then over here on the front cover on the left, because I will be stitching around the entire journal, I'm only going to stitch vertically on the right side of that strip. And I'm also going to take a quick second to ink up the edges on these flaps because that's the look that I like. Another step you definitely don't have to do. All right, and now I'm just going to run over to my sewing machine. You want to make sure your paper is pointing in the direction that you want your journal when you're looking at your journal. This is the top, this is the bottom. So I want to make sure my paper is facing the right direction because I'm only going to sew on the right side here and both sides here. All right, there we go. I also should mention, because of the fact that I'm going to sew around the entire journal, that's also why I did not choose to sew the top and the bottom of these little strips. So this is the easy flap. We're just going to glue this in place. I know a lot of people are very hesitant to run any type of adhesive through their sewing machine. I understand that completely, and I'm not, suggesting that you do anything you're uncomfortable with. I have found that my sewing machine tends to, not be bothered by the adhesive if I let it dry. I've never had any problems with it. I've had that machine for years and I sew a lot of paper. So anyway, do what you're comfortable with. Okay, so this side over here, because of the V shaped on this envelope, I'm actually going to run a little bead of glue along the edge of this envelope here. It'll make our tuck spot a little narrower toward the center, but that's okay. I don't want to risk gluing my envelope shut. Again, ask me how I know. Okay, so I got the glue there. Make sure I'm gluing this in the right direction. Okay, and I just want to make sure and double check that that glue is not seeping out, and I seem to be okay. Okay, so now we can add our inside flap to the journal here. I'm going to measure this. I know that I need a piece that is just under 9.5. So I'm going to cut my paper so that it fits inside the envelope, just so I don't have that hard seam against the flap. So I'm going to be cutting mine at about 2.5 inches, and that's going to put about 1/2 inch of paper inside the envelope. So 2.5 inches. Let's make the stripes go the direction that I really want them to go, which is vertically. And then I know that I cut the rest of my paper at 9 7/8. I'm actually going to cut this at about 9 6/8. So I know that it will smoothly move inside this envelope. Because I cut this a little shorter, you can see how it goes in and out pretty smoothly there. And again, I'm going to ink the edge of my envelope. So I just added glue to this piece of paper. I know that because of the diagonal cut of this flap, I gotta be careful with the glue. I don't want to get it all over my desk. Be smart, put something under your envelope. I feel pretty good about that. I'm gonna flip it over just so I don't get glue all over my desk. And then I have a paper towel. I can just easily wipe off that excess glue. And again, I want to check the inside and make sure I don't have any glue sticking my envelope closed, which I don't. Then I'm just going to trim this up so that it fits the shape of my envelope. So now we have our envelope put together. I can fold this flap again to get that crease there, and I just love that. That is so fun. I'm going to be running mine through the sewing machine. After this dries for a few minutes, I'm going to choose to stitch top side here, and I'm going to go all the way around that little flap, all the way around the perimeter of my journal cover. You could make this no-sew easily. You could just line it with some tape. You could glue on a little trim pieces of paper. You could use lace or ribbon. I took a little break and I let this dry, and then I ran it over to my sewing machine and I just stitched around the edge. I put this zigzag stitch around all of the covers, and then on the flap I just decided to do a straight stitch just because I like the way that those are different when I have the journal closed. The next thing you're going to need to do for your book is to pick out a variety of papers that you want to use in your journal. I have 20 pieces of paper in this signature, and because I have a couple pieces of thicker scrapbook paper, I wouldn't really want any more than this in this journal because this is a one signature journal and it's kind of made it a little extra thick because of the papers. So you could go anywhere from 10. I would normally do 15, but I wanted 20 pieces in this. So just to give you an idea, if this is brand new to you, I have a piece of double-sided scrapbook paper here. I have a music sheet. I have tea stain paper. I have a book page from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I have a lined paper out of a journal that I picked up at TJ Maxx. I have a vintage piece of ledger, and instead of cutting it to fit, I folded up the bottom and I just stitched it with my sewing machine. I have a piece of tea stain paper. I like to make this heart dyed paper, and this has some blue in it. I just decided to use that as a book page. And something else I really like to do is mix and match the sizes of my paper, and also just the variety and the layout. I think it's a lot of fun when you go to play with the journal later. I use this book, this old vintage book that I have called Ships of the Past. I did reinforce it because of how old the paper is. It wants to break when you add it, when you fold it and add it to the journal. So I reinforced it with Scotch tape on both sides of that page. I have this really fun program sheet log, this vintage program sheet. I have no idea what that's for, but I love the colors. I love the font of the numbers. I just think it's fun. Tea stain paper, some old lined paper. Here's another ink dyed paper. I already had done the stitching on that, and I never have a journal big enough for it to fit in, so I use that in these journals. This is a regular piece of scrapbook paper. It is not double-sided, but instead of cutting it to fit, again, I folded up the bottom and just stitched that pocket closed. This is a book page out of a whale book that I have. There's some fun images in there. This is a vintage book on aquariums. It's from March 1949. I think that's a lot of fun. Tea stain paper again. Here's a book from a vintage shell book, tea stain paper. And then I have this fun yacht log. So the center page is Log of the Yacht. I love this. I love this book. Anyway, so that is the center of my signature. So after you get them all laid out how you like them and how you want them in the book, you're going to fold all of them. You're going to get them all ready to bind into your book. Now, I've been doing this for a long time, so I'm comfortable not clipping it down. If this is new to you or you have little ones making this, you can grab some jumbo paper clips or any other kind of clips you might have, and you can clip all 4 sides of your journal, and that'll just kind of help keep things in place. I like to use this old dictionary. I've been poking through this thing for a long time. Probably is still just going straight down to the desk, but that's okay. So I get everything lined up how I like it. I like to pinch my journal in my book. So then I have my little awl here. And I'm just going to, first I like to poke the center. And then about 1.5 inches away from the top and the bottom of the book. I'm just going to make a basic pamphlet stitch in my journal. Now, to keep everything in place, I do like to take some clothespins, and until I'm sewing it shut, I like to clip everything together so it doesn't move. You want to use a heavy string here. I happen to have this cotton thread. You could use embroidery floss. I just like to measure a little over 3 lengths of my book to make sure I have enough. Then I'm going to take a rather large needle. This is from a set. I think it was called doll needles, like to make baby dolls. That's just what they happened to be called when I picked them up at Walmart. But I just like it to have a big eye so that I can fit my thicker cord through there when I'm working with it. We're going to start in the center of the journal, and we're going to go down through the outside. I'm sure everyone watching this has seen this done. I like to pinch the end of my thread. Then you're going to go from the outside where you came out of the back, and you're going to go back inside to create your first stitch. I'm left-handed. This is the direction I'm going. I know most people watch this and they do everything backwards. All right, so now I'm going to hold all this tight. I have a hold of my center string here with my right hand, and I'm pulling tight with my left. And then I'm going to go back down through my journal pages. Now I'm pulling this, and I'm making sure everything's tight, because if you stitch it in loosely, your pages are going to be loose, and that's pretty frustrating when you've worked so hard on your journal and all your pages are loose and you got to restitch it. Then you're going to take your string that's now on the outside of your cover, and you're going to go back down through that center hole. If you're holding everything in place, it should line up properly, and don't be frustrated if it doesn't. It's a common problem. If, like me, my needle's not just popping right back up through there, so I like to take my needle. I like to have a lot of string for this. And I go back down through the center just to make sure my pages are lined up. There we go. And I was a little off. So then I go back through the center. The other thing you really want to be careful with is that you don't poke your needle through the string that's already there. If you do that, it's going to knot your cord, and you're not going to be able to get your strings pulled tight. It's going to cause a problem. So you want to make sure that your strings are not poking through each other. So then you pull everything tight. You also want to make sure that the 2 strings you're going to tie together are not on the same side as your center thread here. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to pull that under my center thread, and that way when I make a double knot, it's going to be over my center thread. Okay, so now I can take it off the needle, and I'm just gonna make this into a tight double knot, and our journal has been put together. So here at this point, you can cut your thread short if you want to. If you want to add some beads or a dangle off the edge of your journal, you're going to want to leave that longer, so you can do that. I know that I want mine to be short, actually. So I'm just going to trim that with a little bit of thread because I just really like the way that looks. Okay, so now I'm going to poke a hole here in my little flap so that I can make my closure into the lip of the envelope. So again, you want to be careful when you're poking your hole. I like to open my journal up all the way and get that cover all by itself, because don't ask how many times I've poked a hole in here, and I've poked a hole in the other side of my cover too. I do tend to be clumsy like that. Okay, so I'm just going to take my Crop-A-Dile. If you don't have a fancy tool like this, you can just use a paper punch. And I'm gonna eyeball this and just make a hole here in the center. Now you can stop there. You can just add your string or your ribbon, whatever you're going to use for a closure, to that hole. I'm going to add an eyelet to mine. Okay. I'm just going to pinch my eyelet here on my cover. There we go. Okay, so there's my eyelet. And to finish it up, you're going to want to grab some kind of ribbon or twine or something to use as a closure. I have pre-cut my piece of sari ribbon here that I already know that I want to use. So I'm going to fold it in half. It's a rather long piece. I just kind of eyeballed it. It's not a certain length, but I know that I want it to wrap a couple times around the journal, so I made it pretty long. I folded it in half so I have a little loop. And I'm going to put that loop up through the eyelet. Now I have this loop, and I'm just going to make my little knotted closure. Now I can wrap my sari a couple times around that journal and then just tuck it under. Now I have a pretty long little tail here, and I do know that because of all the shells on this journal, I don't want to take away from the wallpaper art on this journal cover, but I would like to make it a little boho, give it a little boho style. I already have all of these wooden beads I've picked up years ago at Michael's. The other thing I'm going to use is a beading needle. I did not know about these. I'm super excited to own these. I have made so many journals without them. All right, so if these are new to you, like they were to me, what is so amazing about them is they're a really long piece of flexible wire. Like I have a variety pack, there's different ones in here, but the main goal is that you're going to add your lace or your ribbon that tends to be thick that you can't feed through a bead into that large hole, and then this flexible piece of wire is going to help you guide the ribbon through there. So here you can tell that I opened up my little beading needle. I'm just going to stick my piece of sari in there. I kind of pinch it closed so I know it's going to stay put. It's kind of funny because I've gone through these beads so often, I've already used my favorite ones. So then I'm just going to stick that wire through that bead. I zoomed in so you could see this a little better. So because it's a flexible piece of thin wire, and then you just pull your bead down over that super thick piece of sari. I love that. I'm going to tie this a little high here. There we go. Just going to tie a knot or two. It's okay. And that is our super simple envelope journal. This is just a little reminder to those of you who are already journal makers that this fun, simple little journal is a lot of fun. If you got the kids home for the summer, this is a great little craft and project you can do together on those rainy afternoons. Keep yourselves entertained. If you're going on a camping trip, this is a great little thing that you can take along with you. And if you're like me and you're going to be following along with Jessica, who again is Paper Terrace, on YouTube, I'll link her down below. You won't want to miss a day of her collab. I'm really excited to have my journal ready and prepped. Like I said, there's a lot of YouTubers that'll be participating in that, and I'm excited. Also, quick little mention, I can never make one of anything. I had a lot of fun making these journals. So these journals are going to be listed over on my website. That link will be in the description box down below. You saw a little flip through of the pages. There are 20 pages in here. The papers are almost identical. The scrapbook papers are from the same paper pad that I decided to use in this. This one has blue gingham here. This one happens to have fish on the inside. I'll take a picture of them on the listing on my website. But if you're interested in picking up one of these shell journals for yourself, those will be listed on my website. And I haven't made it yet, but I have some scraps with this wallpaper. I'm going to make a wallpaper tag that will be included with each journal. You'll get another piece of that wallpaper made into a tag. All right, you guys, that's it for today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you're new, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Also, if you've just stuck with me because you enjoy my videos, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to watch today. Everybody have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.